Namaste and welcome. I'm Pratim Ranjan Bose and you are listening to my podcast Perspective. Earlier this month, I was invited by the Ashoka Center for a People-Centric Energy Transition, ACPET, a wing of Ashoka University, to deliberate on energy financing. In this episode, I'll share my views on India's outstanding achievements in energy transition in electricity and the areas that need attention. Access to energy is a top marker for development and growth, and India has done remarkably well in ensuring the availability of all forms of energy from cooking gas to piped natural gas over the last 15 odd years. India's electricity sector has witnessed arguably one of the fastest transformations in world history. In barely a decade, India's household electricity connection increased from 67% to 99%. Generation capacity increased manifold. The average grid supply in rural areas increased from 12 to 20 hours a day. The peak deficit declined from over 10% to 1%. But the plant load factor or utilization of coal-based generation capacities contributing 75% of India's electricity generation dropped from 85% to around 55%, indicating an oversupply situation, which is essential for quality supply. On top of that, solar mix in generation increased from negligible in 2014 to 5% in 2023 as against 4.7% in USA and China. All three countries have easy access to cheap conventional sources, particularly coal. The disconnect lies in their purchasing power. India's per capita income is $2,500 at current prices. China is $13,000 and USA $76,000. In 1992, the USA used to source over 50% of power from coal with a per capita of $25,000. Clearly, India pursued contradictory goals of ensuring universal access to electricity at affordable prices and energy transition at the quickest possible time. That puts finance at the center point of discussion. More so because India is now aiming for a steeper 32% solar mix in electricity in 2032. Let me elaborate on the weaknesses in the framework. First, as explained before, the Indian power sector has high levels of redundancy in coal-based generation. This is largely due to a threefold increase in coal-based power capacity between 2007 and 2017. Redundancy is necessary for a quality supply of power. However, idling of capacity is cost. Solar adds to the idling cost by further replacing coal power during the daytime when the demand load is weak in India. The transmission and distribution grid is created for the supply of electricity from the power plant to the final consumer. If solar is generated on rooftops, it creates redundancy in the grid as well, thereby pushing up the average cost of grid electricity. Except in Gujarat, rooftop solar has not picked up in India in the domestic sector yet. However, the government has just started pushing it. That takes us to a crucial issue. Rooftop solar is popular in the West, but why not in India? Part of the answer lies in a serious anomaly in the electricity tariff structure in India, where roughly 50% of electricity consumers, namely industry, commercial, and a fraction of the household consumers, are so highly overcharged that the rest of the consumers from agriculture and domestic get electricity at a throwaway price. Many get it free. Clearly, one half of Indian consumers do not feel the economic reason to move to solar rooftop. The other half, who are overcharged, wants to shift, but the electricity distribution companies resist the move by creating artificial barrier. They are afraid of losing the only source of revenue. However, the tariff structure is proving insufficient to meet the rising cost of electricity supply in India. Distribution is a monopoly of state governments in India. On paper, states offer subsidy to discoms. In reality, those subsidies remain on paper. Cash-starved discoms do not pay generators and coal companies and raise bank finance to meet expenses. If you add all dues, outstandings, and debts, the electricity sector is running an accumulated finance gap of nearly rupees 8 lakh crore or roughly $96 billion. Can India risk further widening of the finance gap? The answer is a strict no. India should take corrective measures to ensure recovery of costs from the consumer. The electricity sector saw its last major reform 20 years ago. Given the low purchasing power, subsidy payments are unavoidable. But the current system is unsustainable. In future, all subsidies must be paid through direct benefit transfer to the consumer and electricity must be sold at market price. Good finance is critical for the sustainability of the energy transition. Thank you for listening Perspective. If you like this episode, please share and subscribe. See you next week. फिर मिलेंगे.